Tango 1 at the top. We are at Pop-Up Vehicle. 10-4, Tango 1. You have control. Tango 1 copy. Stand by. Stand by.
Integrity, passion, resilience. That's what this place was built on. That's what our community is founded on. Don't act like the example, just be the example. This is the home of the greatest fitness community in the world. We're trying to create strong, able bodies, resilient to injury with a gas tank to get shit done. If there's one thing from this podcast, it's about taking immediate action, find the problem, fix the problem. This is your opportunity. It's either a hell yes or a fuck no. It's that simple. You're doing that. The Tango 1 podcast. Now is the time to take action. Now's the time to do more and be more.
.63", 212 pounds.
Well, his vertical must have been pretty good too.
Yeah, his vertical is really good. I think his vertical was 37, 38 inches.
Yeah, you had posted that thing on Instagram.
Yeah.
It's like, holy Jesus,
and
man.
Power clean 305 pounds. And
Did they actually test that there?
They didn't test that, but he got
Let's say they did.
13 reps on the bench, and he's doing really well.
That's great to hear. It's really great to hear. We're on, just so you know, when he claps, that means we're on.
Oh, okay. So we're officially on now.
We're officially on. Do you need anything before we get started?
No, I'm good.
If I would have known how to birthday cake for you,
Yeah.
but I don't know if I have enough candles.
At this age, you don't need a birthday cake.
So welcome to Tango 1 Podcast, everybody. I'm sure you recognize the voice of my guest already because he is a 3 or 4 time guest. One of my favorite people in this county. My kids are like, "Who are you going to interview today, Dad?" And I'm like, it's a legendary Windsor coach. So for sure you're getting my vote when it comes to the Windsor Hall of Fame. But man, I'm happy to have you here. So we got Jimmy MacDougall. He's 35. What are you? 35 years almost now. It's teaching.
No, 28.
28. I was gonna say. I thought.
More to go.
But it's over 35 years of coaching, right?
Coaching, yes.
Right. So and you've coached everything, basically every sport under the sun.
Yes.
Which was funny because this is kind of how this podcast came about. I reached out to you about coaching my kids, and I thought, you know what a better conversation to have, because we've really never talked about youth sports at a length. We've talked about teams, we've talked about how to train athletes, but we've never really talked about youth sports. And I think I've seen some things already in my little bit of involvement that that I think you can shed some light on and give your wisdom on.
For sure, it's one of those avenues, I think, where sometimes as coaches you want to do the best job you can, but then there's pressure, and the pressure you'll feel as a coach is you'll feel pressure from the other parents, you'll feel pressure from your coaching staff, and you're going to feel pressure from your kids. And you always have to understand, I think, that your coaches, as long as they understand your philosophy, should be on board. The parents, I believe you have to first educate and highlight what your philosophy is going to be at the beginning, and kind of use it as like a sales technique. You have to sell your philosophy to the parents, because ideally at the end of the day with youth sports, it's about fun and enjoyment. And everybody will get caught up from time to time in the score and what your record is. But the ultimate goal should be how many of the kids that play on your team sign up to play next year.
Yes.
And that's a big goal as a coach that you should have. And how many kids can authentically say at the end that was an enjoyable, positive experience, and I was age appropriately treated, or I was treated like a 12-year-old because they are 12 years old, or they're treated like a 9-year-old because they are 9 years old. It does not matter how athletic a kid is, how tall or how big a child is at that age in sports. We have to treat them age appropriately, because ultimately that's the level they are maturity-wise. So we can do all we want about doing the latest NFL football training with these kids, or NHL, doing what Connor McDavid does. But these kids don't have the mental maturity to be able to handle that. And that's the key, is it has to be athlete, child focused.
Yeah, I love a couple of things you said too, and I want to unpack that a little bit. So first of all, Jimmy is a coach, teacher at Kennedy. You've taught more than one place. You taught in Amherst right here around the corner. I know we hit a lot of our Amherst people get excited every time we see you on there. And you're the educational liaison at ETS, which is the fabulous facility that we recommend for any teen athlete to go to. So he knows this stuff. So one of the things you said, and I was contemplating doing this. I haven't done it yet. I just started Turtle Club baseball. I told you I'm starting to coach football, but we're one game into Turtle Club baseball. But I was like, you know what? I should actually have a meeting with the parents and discuss this, because my goals with the kids are, I want every single player, no matter what, athletic ability they have or experience they have in baseball, to be better baseball players by the end. But number one, I want them to create a positive association with this game.
Yeah.
Because I think, and to just sports in general, because like if you ruin them in baseball, they might not want to play, volleyball or soccer or badminton
Absolutely.
or whatever that little interest is. And then the age appropriate thing, I'm having a hard time remembering being that young in sports.
Mm-hmm. And the ultimate a lot of people forget what they were like when they were that age. Everybody wants to say as an adult, yes, when I was that age, I was this competitive and I used to work so hard. I'd practice out in the yard and these kids don't want to. Most of that is nonsense, in my opinion. Most people, when they were that age, still didn't want to run to the outfield and back. In football, they didn't want to run around the goalpost 3 times. They wanted to play the game, and the games were fun. More often than not, the practices were not as enjoyable. And I don't know if there was as many parents that were actually doing the things that they said that they were doing, because if they were, they'd have probably played at a much higher level.
Yeah, I coached Windsor minor from, 2001 to 2007, 8 or something like that. So the last era, I had no kids involved, which made me like, it was probably a better position because I felt like I was like totally, like everybody's even here for me. I don't know any of these kids. I don't know the parents, nothing. I was a totally different age group. I was in my young 20s. And what you say is funny because I feel like there's a lot of middle linebackers out there.
Yeah.
Because every dad would come to me, is like, oh, yeah, I played high school. I was a linebacker. I'm like,
Yeah.
Really?
It's wild to me. So I
You don't look much like a linebacker.
Yeah. I could say something there, but I don't want to. So I went from, I was a very successful high school coach in Amherst for a long time, and I had a great opportunity to go coach at the university. So
I forgot about your Lancer stint
so
too.
I went to the University of Windsor and was assistant head coach and defensive coordinator there, and we had a great run there. And then the following year after I left the university, I coached my son's team when my son was 12, and it was with the Essex Ravens organization. It was a great organization, the Essex Ravens. But I shared my philosophy with the parents, and these parents ate me alive almost, where they thought I had 3 heads. What do you mean that we're not going to have these guys running around the goalpost 5 times before practice? What do you mean you're not going to do full-scale tackling with each other? We got to teach these kids to be tough. And I was like, listen, we have to teach these kids to enjoy the game before we can teach them to be tough. And then from the enjoyment, they can get enough confidence that we can start to do some low-level tackling drills. And we got to start this process slowly. And I had to have a big parents meeting I got a 3-page letter mailed to my house. And I know the person that mailed it, and I've kept that kind of quiet all of these years. And if I was actually having a beer on this podcast, I might actually say their name, but I know who they are. But I've kind of kept that quiet. And I realized that, you have to understand where people are coming from too. They want the best for their kids. They just don't know. And so I try to educate them. And then just like when you teach high school, you'll get through to some and you won't get through to the others. And, we had an unbelievable year. And it's funny, my son, Brett, is now going into his 3rd year at the University of Windsor. And he just was fortunate enough to play in the Canadian University East-West All-Star game. And one of the first things he texted me, it was in Hamilton, and he's like, Dad, you're not going to believe this, but there's 5 players from the Brampton team that we played against when we were 12 years old that were at this actual game. Now that Brampton team was absolutely loaded. They had 5 kids that were at the CIS All-Star game, and they had John Michie, who was a receiver at the University of Alabama, on that team, and he was just drafted in the first round in the NFL. And then there's another young man that plays defensive line at Arizona State. So this team was unreal. And most of the parents meeting, not to get too much into detail, but it was kind of comical. This team is loaded at 12, and they beat us 62-0. So it was almost like a revolt that the reason they beat us 62-0 is because we're not running around the goalpost at the beginning of practice, and these kids aren't in good enough shape. I'm like, no. The dudes on that team are just way better than the dudes on this team right now.
Well, I think a lot with parents is like they think that you have a reputation of a very energetic, and energetic can be misunderstood as like the old school, like in your face, like screaming, and we've probably, I'm gonna speak for you, but I mean the coach that grabs your face mask and ragdolls you around and makes you feel like like a little bitch basically.
Yeah.
Like those are not the experiences that I relished from football. I think football brought toughness, but I think when parents bring them to the diamonds or to the fields and they see me and my background, maybe my tattoos, my personality, they think I'm gonna be the disciplinarian, and I do correct kids if they're behaving poorly on the baseball diamond, but I'm not gonna do it in a way that's unbecoming. But also, like, if you're not establishing discipline at home, like, I think the coach should be complementing the values of the household, right? Like, maybe a little bit different, we're not all the same, but at least complementary towards the same, like, end goal. And if you're not disciplining at home and you're dropping them off at the field and expecting me to be the disciplinarian, all that's going to do is make them hate coming to sports because it's really easy at home and real shitty at practice, right? Like, do you agree?
Totally. And it's like and again, I don't want to bash parents because there's 95% of the
We're
parents
creating awareness. We're creating awareness.
Are well-intentioned people. But if your child comes to football practice and he's got the big jug of water that the mom put all the ice cubes in, and he's got a little snack tray with the sandwich in it and the crust cut off, and now you're expecting me to teach him how to be tough in an hour and a half? Come on.
With the crust cut off.
Holy smokes.
If somebody handed you a sandwich with the crust cut off, what do you do with it?
Oh, I don't know. It's been a while since I've had too many sandwiches. When I was a kid, all I used to eat is bologna and mustard sandwiches on white bread every day.
That's right. That. With saran wrap wrapped absolutely tightly.
Absolutely.
I was like laughing at this the other day at baseball because all these kids were like, "Can we get water?" I'm like, "We have been out here 8 minutes.
Yeah.
And you need water." We used to get like one jugger juice in the morning, and that was it. We never walked around with a water bottle or containers of water. My kids, it's great. It's great to be hydrated in the fitness industry. We know this, but like, it's crazy the like dependence that they have on this like little water bottle.
When I was a kid, it was just you drank out of a hose. If you played outside, you drank out of the hose.
Crazy. Yeah. It's so funny. So funny. So like, I was recently heard somebody telling a story about being like disciplined for running laps for losing in a game at like 10 years old, 8 years old, things like that. That just doesn't happen, and I don't think it should happen. I don't think it should have happened probably back in the day, just because we did things back then in a certain way. Like, we used to also sit next to the asbestos pipe in class and like pick at it. Like, we don't do that anymore, or eat like bologna and processed cheese sandwiches. Like, we don't do those things anymore. So why would you? At the end of the day,
it doesn't work.
Right.
Like, if running around the goalposts, I'm a competitive dude. If running around the goalpost 6 times after a loss is going to correlate to a win next week, listen, I'm all for it. But it just doesn't work. It just creates more misery, a more negative response to the experience, less enthusiasm at practice. And if you want to be negative with, or that time when the kids need a little verbal tongue lashing, do it after a win, when their confidence is really high. If you do it after a win and everybody, you got to knock them down. Of, hey, listen, we won 21-7, but we can play so much better. Like, we missed this block, we missed this catch in the outfield in baseball. Kids are more receptive when their confidence level is high. When they're already beaten down by getting beat 24-0 or 6-0 in a baseball game, for us to tell the kids, you guys were lazy in there, we weren't mentally prepared, it's going to be like a double whammy on their psyche. And if you even look at the highest levels of sport now, there's a big transformation to that old school coach, the Mike Keenans in hockey, the Bill Belichick's in football, and the new age coach has an understanding of athlete psychological needs. And that's why a guy like Sean McVay and Pete Carroll are the new age coaches of, high level sports. Cliff Kingsbury, who's the head coach, he was at Texas Tech, and now he is the head coach at the Arizona Cardinals. And in a sport like the NFL, where winning is the only thing that matters, and people's jobs and careers are on the line based on only the scoreboard, Cliff Kingsbury still in practice gives the players every 20 or 30 minutes a 5-minute break to go check their phones, because he understands the audience that he's working with, and he understands that these NFL players, although they're worth millions of dollars, are still 21 to 31 years old, and they have not an addiction, but they need to be on their phones all the time. They need to check their social media and stuff,
addiction.
And it's important for them. So if it's important for them, understand the audience. And it's shown to, and I'm not saying, go check your phone or go on TikTok to 8-year-old baseball players, but it speaks to meeting the athletes where they're at and having an understanding of where they're at in their development and acting appropriately.
So I'm assuming a lot of people listening have, like, you're probably in my age group, probably got kids around the same size, same age. And one thing I'd like to pick your brain about too, because you've been there as a father and probably as a coach, is travel sports. Travel sports at like 8 years old, 7 years old. Like my boys had the opportunity to play this year, and it's 5 nights a week from April until I might misspeak here, until I think September, with like 4 or 5 tournaments away. The cost, the cost is a whole other issue, but like, I think for me personally is like, and a lot of parents I make the argument, I'm like, I don't want to put my boys in that, I just feel like it's too much at this age, and I want them to enjoy it and have summers. But he says, yeah, they love it. But my opinion is, yeah, of course they love it, but they would also very much love just to ride their bikes or play road hockey or, play sandlot ball in my backyard, or just, shoot water guns, or, shoot the slingshot at rabbits. Like, they would love to do anything. And I feel like we're taking that away from our children and kind of like creating, like, if you're in school from all day and then you come home for 20 minutes and your parent, I would know them. I would have to rush home from the gym, rush to this practice, and then they're back in front of adults again. Like, it's all controlled is what I think. I think we're taking something away from kids with that.
Yeah, and I think
I know it's a touchy subject. I know you coach a lot of travel kids.
I just think that it's almost impossible to unring that bell, because in a perfect world, I would agree. If you wanted a child to be the best 16, 17-year-old hockey player or 18-year-old football player, when it comes time to get a scholarship or get drafted in the OHL, the best way to do that is to expose them to a wide variety of activities and play outside and understand all those things. But in the real world, if I have let's say a 10-year-old boy, and I adopt that philosophy, at the end of the school day, when he comes home or she comes home, most of their friends are involved in this cycle as well, and they're all playing sports, and they're all traveling 5 nights a week. So yes, my son or daughter can go out and play in the backyard, maybe with their brother or sister or by themselves, but there's not many other people to play with that are like-minded people, because they're all in that same sort of hamster wheel chase as well. And what ends up happening is they just sit playing video games or on their phone.
I find it so disheartening.
It's kind of tough.
I find it so disheartening. It's like, one, there's 3 levels of travel, so it's not really travel.
Yep.
Like, every kid, like, these kids are not like, some of these kids that are playing travel are not what I would think would be travel, equivalent, I guess, is lack of. And then in House League, it's made the leagues very difficult. Yes. Because of the level of play. Like, I think like a lot of these kids would benefit from having more talented kids, and the talented kids would benefit from, helping to lead and get more out of the kids who don't, and helping like kids who maybe don't have the confidence to feel welcome. Because like, when your kid plays well in these house leagues, they're like, you should be in travel, and it's like almost like, oh, come on, just let my kid play.
You're caught between a rock and a hard place sometimes as a parent, I think, because let's say you have a 9-year-old son and he's trying out for the AA hockey team. You're not going all in with AAA, you just want to make the regular AA hockey team. If you don't do all of the things like the extra skating camps and the extra, personal development stuff, which may be beneficial for your child in the long run not to do those things, but if you don't do those things in the immediate moment, then there's a pretty good chance that they might not make that AA team. And then it's another rabbit hole you got to go down, where you see your child get cut, and that's always a difficult thing. Even for me, my son got cut a couple of different times from AA and ended up playing AE hockey, and it's hard to see your son go through that, and it's hard even as a parent. You're very disappointed, even for somebody like me who believes, and everybody should play a bunch of different sports, and we're not worried about how good you are at 8 years old or 10 years old. It's still a tough process to go through. And I think that's why parents get the big bucks, because it's not an easy role.
That is true.
It's not an easy job to navigate.
That is true. I'm wondering if, like, my strategy, I love sports, and I want my kids to excel at sports. I think sports is a lot of reasons why I've done the things I've done in this world. But my parents we didn't have it, I guess, when I was a kid, unless you played hockey.
Yep.
So I really didn't dive all into sports until I was like 14, and then it was probably really good because it kept me from getting into some shit.
For sure, but
right?
At the same time, when you started doing that at 14, you weren't burnt out because of doing it at 8, 9,
Right.
10, 11, and 12. So it was a novel thing for you. You almost felt, this is awesome, because it wasn't a regular occurrence in your life. So then from 14 to 19, 20, 21, where the sports kind of really matters in terms of future opportunities, you were all in. And if maybe you had started playing when you were 8 years old on that track, by the time you were 14, you might have been burnt out.
Or maybe I would have gone pro. Hey, who knows?
Yeah.
Or I would have grown 3-4 inches and gone pro.
Yes, and that becomes a genetic thing where you just blame your parents. It's like,
Yeah,
I told a
yeah,
parent
it's-
one time, I'm like, listen,
Come on, Mom, you're
my
listening to
son
this
doesn't
podcast.
make the NHL. It's not because I didn't give him 6-foot genetics. So if your son doesn't make the NHL, it's your fault, because you're too short as a dad. Because your kid's real good.
I'm wondering if I can keep my kids caught up. This is my plan right now.
Yeah.
Keep my kids caught up from the social standpoint, no problem. From the athletic standpoint, with just having fun in the backyard, like the three of us. I'm hoping that I can keep them caught up enough where when they get to 13, 14, they're still able to compete with those same kids when they do try out for those same teams.
And the goal has got to be, like, let's make it, call it spade a spade.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
The goal is not to produce a professional athlete.
No.
Because professional athletes produce themselves. They're hardwired, these dudes. And you can't create that hardwired attitude. You have to really, really love it. And I say to parents all the time, when their kid comes in and they're 14 years old, I'm saying, okay, let's pretend, parents always say the same thing, I don't know if I want him to have fun, and I'm not thinking he's going to be in the NHL. But in the back of their mind, there's always the dream and the hope. And I'm not here to squash anybody's dreams. I'm here to say, dream that dream as long as that dream can still be alive, okay? But understand this. If that dream is ever going to come into fruition at 19 years old, they have to be loving this stuff at 19. And if they're not loving it at 14 and 15, it's very difficult to get them to love it at 19. But if we create a process where at 14 they love it, and at 15 they're still loving it, and at 16 they're still loving it, you wouldn't believe the simple games of Simon Says and rock, paper, scissors that I will play with university athletes that I work with, that they just love. And say, hey, can we play Simon Says? And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, for sure. And we're playing Simon Says, we're playing rock, paper, scissors, and they love it. And I'm the greatest Simon of all time. I'm undefeated.
So we talk about being hardwired. If you were to ask me who's the most intense, most competitive person I know, it would be a tough line between you and Luke Wilson. So the two of you are two peas in a pod, man.
You know what? I think that there's
Luke does say you're a psycho. He says,
yeah, and I'm kind of crazy.
He's like, do not wrestle that man.
Well, I'll show you an example.
I am not
of the
fighting
different
right here.
levels
That's what you're going for.
Of competitiveness. I'll give you two quick examples. One, I was a pretty good wrestler at one point in my life. So, but it's like riding a bike. You kind of still understand kinesthetic awareness and bodies in space and stuff. So Luke and I got into a little wrestling match on a Tuesday, right? And it was almost a draw. And Luke, at the end, he was kind of surprised a little bit, and he said, hey, send me the video of that wrestling match, because somebody had videoed it. So on Thursday, he comes back in, he's like, okay, we'll go again. This guy, who's a Super Bowl champ, could have played 3 professional sports, got into a little bit of a draw with a 52-year-old man, and he went home and broke down the tape. He broke down the tape. And then he comes in 2 days later, and because obviously he's way bigger, stronger, faster, more explosive, and more athletic, and more mentally tough than I am. I mean, he beat the snot out of me. He beat the snot out of me so bad, not like I wasn't injured, but I was so exhausted from getting my ass kicked for an hour, and it was probably half an hour. I couldn't work. I had to go home. And I went home, I slept till the next day. I was destroyed. So here's a guy, Luke is so competitive that he looks back and says, okay, that guy got a little too close for my comfort. That guy thinks he's good. I'm going to show him. And he broke the tape. So that shows you different level. And the second one, I'm telling you, I work out with the same guy every morning, Chris Robacumba. He's one of my favorite people. I've learned more about different groups of people and what it's like to grow up in his environment, how he grew up. And he came over from Rwanda and went to Herman, became a valedictorian at Herman, was a captain at Duke University, got a full ride scholarship to Duke, went to a few NFL camps, played 9 years in the CFL, and long story, he had a master's degree in business at Duke and is a very successful human being. But we'll compete, and I think that I'm mentally tough, and and we're on the same level in some things. But when we have a real competition, he beats me by like this much all the time. And the reason he beats me by that much is he's just a little more used to being under the bright lights than I am because of the experiences that he's had. And that's why he played at Duke and I played at the University of Windsor. Like, because he's just better than I am. But even in activities that we are equal in, his mentality is just a shade better. And if you compare him to people that are, to Tom Brady, there's small levels of things that, back to youth sports, that parents don't understand the mentality that it takes to be a successful professional athlete. And most of that mentality is hardwired at a young age. And some of those variables can be taught, but a lot of it is just who you are as a human being, I believe.
Yeah, I agree with you. I haven't been around as many as you have, but I have been around some great, guys who have gone on and done some great things, like in the NFL and such. Luke being one of them, and Brett Romberg and some of these guys. Like there is something different about them, and the way they move, the way they carry themselves.
Yeah.
The way that they hitch in practice. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and they're not all like Luke, where they're all crazy and wound up and stuff.
Right.
Like Jake Robson is a baseball player. He's been up and down with the Tigers. He's one of the best athletes I've ever been around. He's 5'9", 185-pound guy, but can jump out of the gym, is crazy explosive. And back to the, parents thing, if you talk to Jake, and we've had conversations about it, he said when he was in grade 11, he said, my goal in sports was I thought I had a legitimate chance to be a libero at the University of Windsor volleyball team. And all of a sudden in grade 11, he kind of has a good year playing baseball. He makes the Canadian World Junior team, but that was never on his radar. Just playing sports for the fun of playing sports was on his radar, and not looking for some sort of payoff at the end. And I think it can be, I'm just thinking of this off the cuff right now, like if you equate it to helping somebody, if I helped you because I just authentically have a relationship with you, not thinking of the return that I'm going to get, okay, if I help Tony now, then down the road, he's got a big truck and he may be able to help me move or do something back for me. That then it's not true and authentic. Right. Same thing with sports. If you're playing the sport just because you love it, that's the trait, that's the feedback that you want, as opposed to doing the sport so that there's some payoff down the road. The people that make it are doing it because they love it, not because they think, oh, if I keep doing this, I can get a Division I scholarship. They're playing the sport because they love it, and if the D1 opportunity happens, it happens. And that's what I find with most elite athletes. They just love the process.
So, kind of shift gears, but not totally. Football. I'm starting to coach football. Football is a dying sport around here, it seems. It's kind of, it hurts my heart to watch and to see that, like Luke's school, my old school, that didn't even have a football team, like the last straight before COVID, right? Like didn't even have a senior team at Villanova. And this sport is really falling apart in a lot of ways because of the bad vibes it's got. COVID, I think, didn't help to kind of like sink the ship, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to get into coaching, is hopefully we can raise some love for the game and get some kids to, some good athletes to actually want to maybe hold off on playing whatever, maybe it's whatever sport crosses over, to play a little football and see what do you think about this? Like, is this just, or is this, I don't, is it more dangerous really than hockey? No. Like, I don't think so. Or soccer, or like, no, if it's coached right, or I mean, there's accidents. Right. Baseball, even I saw a ball whiz by a kid's head the other day. I almost fucking shit myself. Yep. Right? Like, what's your thoughts there?
Most concussions still occur in girls soccer because their necks are weak in relationship to the size of their heads, and they've taken steps where they've outlawed heading the soccer ball at younger ages, and it's helped curb that. I do believe is football a more dangerous sport than, parents, I'm not going to let my kid play football, but then they buy him a dirt bike. It's the same type of thing. I think that football is the greatest sport in the world to teach delayed gratification, because you have so many practices and you play one game a week. It's not like playing basketball where you might play in a tournament on a weekend, play 10 games or 8 games in the weekend. It is the greatest sport for accepting all body types.
I was going to say that.
Because if you're the small, fast kid, there's a place for you. If there's a big, strong, you're kind of a heavier set kid, there's a place for you. Plus, there's 12 opportunities on offense, 12 opportunities on defense, 12 opportunities on punt return, kickoff, kick return. You think of the number of opportunities there are to get kids into a game, And then because of the nature of the sport, it's one of the more demographically diverse sports that we have, where it is affordable for everybody. We have people of all races doing it, and I think that the understanding that kids get about different backgrounds is important through football, and just the level of work that goes into it. Now, to answer your question, I think that football has kind of taken, there's been less participation for a number of reasons. One that I think is a smaller one than we realize is parents thinking that it's too dangerous. I believe that the biggest difference is our school boards not hiring coaches, and this is, I know I'm a teacher. I think that if there was more emphasis on hiring great coaches, because you can't be a great coach unless you're a great teacher. And we have less and less coaches in the high school as a whole. And there are so many people that didn't play minor football, but all of a sudden get introduced to high school football when they get into high school.
First time I played football was in high school, really football. Like I played with my friends, but I never played high school until I played high school football. Put a helmet on.
Passionate coaches at every school, because as you understand, when you coach a high school sport, it's tough if you're not a teacher, because all the practices start at 3 o'clock, and how many people have a job that can get off every day at 3 o'clock? Then they're not seeing the kids in the hall. The amount of kids that I have recruited out of the hallway over the years, you see a body type, you're like, oh my God, you're gonna come over for football? Pat Osborne, who's our basketball coach, his son was a late developing kid, and then came over to Kennedy from Forster when they closed Forster, and he was 6'5", athletic basketball player. And I told Isaiah to come out for football. He had never played before. I'm like, listen, this is the rule I'm going to make with you. You're going to play receiver, and if any coach tells you, you got to go block that guy, you say, nope, Mr. MacDougall said I didn't have to. And all we're going to do is have you run down the field and throw bombs to you, and you just out-jump everybody. It's like, oh my God, yeah, this is a great idea. So he comes out, and, he gets a little confidence with getting a few catches. And now that he gets the confidence, now I'm going to say, hey, Isaiah, you want to go block that guy? Oh yeah, I'll go block that guy now. But if I tried to start with, this a tough physical game, only be played by the toughest men, I say, listen, 72 degrees in the gym every day, man. This is I'm not coming out here in the cold and playing this.
Quick whistles here, quick whistles protected.
But he turned out to be an all-city wide receiver, and easily could have played football in university because he was an athlete. Football, if you're an athlete, you can play that sport. And but I do think that the Essex Ravens have done a great job.
Yeah, they've done a fabulous job over there
of introducing kids to sports. They've started, touch football stuff. It's a great organization. I've coached in it, and my son played in it, and I think that it's a little bit less accessible because you got to drive out to Villanova where they practice at, and it may not be as opportunistic as all of the great high school programs that we had in the past, but it is still a great program, and if your kids want to play football, it's a great organization.
Yeah, so you think it's going to we're going to shift to club football, I guess you call it? I think that
sports as a whole has kind of shifted to begin with towards a more club model.
Just to save on the costs and
I don't know.
And coaching, I mean, there's a lot that goes into coaching. I mean, you guys are already teachers. We all make fun of teachers in the summer break and stuff, but staying 2 hours it's an every single night thing. And not to mention the games you're going to be home at 8 o'clock, and if you got your own families, I understand that commitment. And yeah, coaching. I coached at Villanova basketball when I first left, and I was a policeman at the time, and but I was able to get there and run it. But it was man. You're talking 3 hours, 2 hour practice, hour and a half practice. But by the time you pack up the shit and unpack the stuff,
it's a big commitment. It's a big commitment, especially if you're not a teacher at the school. And if I looked at my high school days, which was a long time ago, and you looked at the landscape of the city, every school had that guy's the basketball coach, and he had coached passionately for 20 years, and that guy's the football coach, and that guy's the track coach, and there was more people doing stuff in the schools. And then secondly, one of the big issues we have in high schools is these kind of super teams, and we're a product of that. I teach at Kennedy, and we get so many kids transfer into Kennedy or leave their school because the basketball at our school is run at a higher level. But when I look back, and that's a tribute to Pat Osborne and Jeff Necker, Steve Savaggio, who are our basketball coaches, But when I was in high school, if I looked across the landscape, there was a Pat Osborne at every high school.
Right.
And so there was no need to go to the school down the road to provide a better opportunity because I was getting one at my local high school.
It's true, because when you played in grade school, you'd go to the high schools for the tournaments, and you'd know the coaches, where they were from. Then you played against those coaches through your junior and then senior, and then coming back to coach.
Yeah.
And being in the schools, with the police teams back in the day, and just being in the schools as a cop, you would still see those same, and you were one of them. You'd still see those same faces, and you're like, oh, I think he was at somewhere else before, but it was the same guys, and they're still coaching. The Len Canes of the world, and you, and the Lowbacks, and there's so many great coaches.
Sovereigns. There's legendary names in high school sports, especially in the city of Windsor. Like, I was so fortunate to have Billy Simmons, who was,
Oh man, Billy, he was
a legendary figure.
Yes.
And Sandwich Athletics.
Absolutely, and I coached with him at AKO, and at that point he had kind of retired from coach. He was the coach's coach, is what we call him. That's why I tried to recruit you. I needed a coach's coach. I need somebody to coach me to coach, and he was there to calm things down and to bring levity.
Talk about full circle for that guy to be calming other
I
people
know, right?
down. Holy smokes! Talk about those old school guys that would grab you by the face mask. Jim, are you gonna play basketball for me this year, son? Because if you behave like that, you're gonna have basketball marks all over your face. But do you respect it? That guy was at my wedding. Like, I love Billy Simmons and Dave Newman and Dave Lynn and Mike Gloucester and Steve Chamko and all these people ran their own sports with the passion for 30 years, and Evan Wright, and it was hard to be the senior basketball coach because you had to coach junior for 15 years for the senior guy to retire before you would get an opportunity. Now, holy smokes, I get some sports in high school on the athletic director. It's like, okay, you're a orange pylon. I'll let you coach because I have nobody else. It doesn't matter who you are. We just need a adult that's breathing sometimes because I just don't have anybody else from time to time. So, but I say that, but more often than not at my school, we're very, very fortunate because of the supportive administration that we have great people in our building that do a great job. So
see, the way I'm looking at it, like my coaches were my references to get in the police department. They're guys that I still keep in touch with. And I think that for me, I'm looking at it, I'm running these blast camps, right? And I'm trying to, because men are struggling. There's a lot of problems in our, we're the ones causing violent crime. We're the ones that are killing ourselves. We're the ones that are in a lot of ways not making decisions, not doing things, not setting the right examples. So I'm running these blast camps to try to help men do that. And I'm like, man, if I could just help some kids when they're a little bit younger to have that confidence.
Yep.
To me, it's not about the sport right now. It's about developing good young people, good young men, because I'm coaching little boys, right?
Yep.
But get a little girl in there too. I'll do my best with her. But my goal with the two sons and then the program I'm running, what I truly believe is really hurting us in the world right now, which is us.
Yep.
Our breed, our gender. I think we're struggling. We need to get some things done and build some little bit stronger.
One thing, there's a line in a movie. The movie's called Crash. Now, there's two Crash movies. One of them is by David Cronenberg, which is kind of out there. But there's one with Matt Dillon and Ludacris is in there, and it's an unbelievable.
Did not expect you to drop Ludacris as one of them. As one of the lead actors. Just showing your ability.
It's a phenomenal movie. It's one of my favorite movies. But at the beginning of the movie, they say that it happens in LA, and they say that everywhere we go, we're behind glass, and we're separated so much. And then I think that coronavirus exaggerated all that, and there's so much separation between people. The 6 foot, we got to be a distance. Now, if we take a look, and I'm just spewing here, I'm no psychologist by any stretch of the imagination, but women will hug one another because it's what they do. Is they see one another, they give each other a big hug, and they get that physical touch. Men are more hesitant to do that, and I think that if we did that more, I love the idea of that bro hug, you kind of give a handshake and a hug. That I think that those types of things are important for connection. We do a thing at ETS where everybody that walks in and everybody that leaves, you got to be able to fist bump everybody. And I think that just that physical touch of a connection, and I don't know if I talked about this on the last time, but there was a psychologist that studied the NBA, and it was a female psychologist, and she studied every game in the NBA, but she didn't know the score. So she didn't have the score on the screen. The only thing she touched or she counted were the physical touches between teammates: fist bumps, chest bumps, pat on the back, pat on the ass, whatever it was. And let's say it was the Detroit Pistons and the Chicago Bulls. She counted how many touches cumulatively the Pistons had versus the Bulls. 96% of the games were won by the teams that physically touched each other the most.
That's wild.
And the sidebar of that would be, okay, you'd say, okay, if I make a three, I'm more likely to get a high five or a fist bump. So is this a real relative study? But they also found that if I missed a three and I got a fist bump, I'm more likely to make the next three. So if you watch the NBA and a guy takes a foul shot, after every foul shot, everybody goes over and gives him a high five. So if he makes the foul shot, he's probably more likely to make the next one. And if he misses the foul shot because of all these high fives, physical touch, connection, his performance is going to improve. And it's interesting, this happened to me yesterday. Friday. So it would have happened 2 days ago. It was the day after the shooting in Texas. And I sat my kids down and I talked about the need and the importance to support each other. I teach in a real wide demographic school, all mixes of races, cultures, religions, everything. And I said, it's just important for us to support one another more. No matter where we come from, we need to support one another more. And then in our gym class, we divide the class into 3 divisions. The really competitive, the recreational, and then I call it the super recreational. Which, I mean, these guys struggle dribbling. And I have a child with autism in there. He's 14 years old. And he's in the super rec division, and he's amazing. Nicest kid in the world. And everybody loves him. So he gets the ball, and he throws one up, and he gets a 3. And everybody goes crazy because he hits the 3. And he's smiling, he's giving the fist bump. And then the ball gets circled around again, the ball lands in his hand. He hits a second one. Now the kids go even crazier. And now they get the ball back as it's possession in basketball. They get the ball back. I'm not kidding you. He had 5 threes in a row. And the place is going. It's erupting. And I stopped the class. I'm like, stop right now. Everybody come over. I said, sit down. Scotty, are you a good basketball player? Oh, no, I'm a terrible basketball player. I said, I don't think anybody ever would mistake Scotty for LeBron James. But look what happened after he was successful and people supported him. Look at how successful he was on the next shot. And the only thing that changed was the amount of support that he felt from his peers in the group. It actually improved his performance and improved the smile on his face. And I'm sure that it improved his mental outlook of the day. That's for sure.
Yeah, man, that's a wonderful story. Yeah. I just did a lecture last week, actually, at a team leader course. And part of my advice to them was physical contact. Like to go around the room and actually put your hand on a guy's shoulder when you're saying like, hey, how's it? Can I help you? Or how are things going? How'd that go for you? How you feeling about that? And just put your hand on somebody's shoulder. And when they walk in the gym too, that's another huge thing for me. I walk around and I tell the coaches that you'll see me actually physically make contact with every single person in this gym. That's part of this. It's innate to humans. It's like where we are a tribe, right? From the tribe days, and it's important to like get that. And I think that was definitely a struggle in the last couple of years. Like, I continued to operate like that, and I was getting looked at like I was like a freak, right? Some points. I didn't stop hugging, right, Irv? It drove Irv crazy.
No, but it's even one of those things that it's a sad state, but back to the youth coaching thing, there's that fine line because there's been so many instances where those lines have been blurred or crossed that we understand the importance of it, but what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and sometimes putting your arm around a kid makes that child feel really uncomfortable, maybe because of experiences that they've had in their lives. So it's important to understand where every kid is coming from. And that's why I think the fist bump is so good because, it's positive, it's a connection. It shows each other that we're on the same page, but it doesn't ever blur those lines or cross those barriers that, people could get the wrong idea, which, in today's day and age, it's unfortunate, but those are the rules we have to play by because, and I'm not saying they're wrong, but just it's what's necessary sometimes.
Yeah, agreed. So speaking of being, ready, planning and things like that, and courageous men. So you had quite the quite the incident that's happened recently, and I actually have not heard this story other than like a couple of lines from you on a text when I sent you like a a great job, I'm proud of you type thing. But man, if you wouldn't, if I don't know if it's too much for you, don't.
No, it's not too much. It's it was pretty emotional. So it was just after high school sports were allowed to go on, and it was our first game in our gym. There were still no parents allowed to be in the stands. So the game was played in an empty gym. And our junior boys team was playing St. Anne's.
It's on basketball.
In basketball. Our junior boys team and a young man who's actually was in my physical education class. Phenomenal young man's on the basketball team. So as the athletic director, I went up to the game and I watched most of the first half. There's 3 minutes to go in the half. And I hadn't eaten in about 8 or 9 hours. I was starving. So I'm like, okay, I'll go to the, get something to eat, then I'll come back for the senior game. So to talk about things going full circle is I walked out into the parking lot, and as I was getting into my car, there were 2 African dads that were sitting, outside the car. And they asked me, they happened to be from kids of St. Anne's, their parents, their dads. And they asked me, how long's the game going to be? I said, well, it's almost halftime. And then the senior game's got to take place. So it'll be probably 2 hours. And they're like, we can't go into the gym and blah, blah. And I just instantly thought of my workout partner, Chris Robokambo, who came over from Rwanda and built this great connection. And I thought, you know what, how bad? And Chris's dad passed away when he was 8. And I'm like, these guys are over here trying to make a better life for their family. Wouldn't Chris love to have watched his dad watch him play? And wouldn't Chris's dad love to see his son play? And I just felt the moment of connection with the 2 dads. And I just said, as crazy as this was, I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'll sneak into the gym and I'll just put you up in the bleachers. I'll violate the COVID rules. Just don't tell anybody. When I was letting them in the building, I'd taken 2 steps into the door and my junior basketball coach was there and he was white as a sheet and he said, Jimmy, he's having a heart attack and I don't know what to do. And I ran in our dressing room, a 15-year-old kid on our junior boys basketball team had went into sudden cardiac arrest. His heart had stopped. There was no pulse. And people are wondering what to do. So I start CPR and female referee Mary, she's also trained in CPR. She was doing mouth to mouth while I was doing the chest compressions, and it was a frightening experience because it took us 90 compressions to get a pulse. And I went 32 breaths, no pulse, 32 breaths, no pulse. And I know I've trained in CPR. I've never done CPR live, but I know the statistics and they're not great. So, but after 90 compressions, she said we have a pulse. So now I'm getting the AED organized and we lost him again. So now I'm back on his chest and then we got him back a second time. I hit him with the AED and he was good and then we lost him again. And now I'm back on his chest again. We get him back. I hit him with AED a second time and that time the ambulance showed up and I'm happy to say he is in my class again and things worked out. He survived the incident. He ended up going to Sick Kids in London for a little bit, or in Toronto, and then he ended up getting surgery in London. They put a stent in his artery, and it was an incredibly traumatic experience. I can't imagine going through that and not being successful because again, they say all's well that ends well, and it was, it was a happy ending, and just the emotional toll it takes is something I never realized because they put the young man on the gurney and the ambulance takes him away, and you don't know whether he's going to live or die, and so you just get in the car and like, okay, what do I do now? Like go to get my subway? Like what do I do? It's like I got as far as Windsor Stadium and I pulled the car over and I just for 30 minutes I just broke down because it was very, very emotional, and it was one of the more traumatic experiences I've ever been through. But yeah, it was a combination of just I wouldn't have went back into that gym if it wasn't for the connection I had with my workout partner, and our connection that we have working out has become so much greater than bench pressing and squatting. It's just a real, true, authentic friendship, even though he comes from the inner city, I come from the suburbs. He is black, I'm white. He is a phenomenal athlete and I was a marginally average athlete. And I think I can swear on the podcast.
Yeah,
the
you
only
can.
thing I can say about that motherfucker, Chris Robacumba, is he cost me my first city championship against Herman, which he likes to remind me of when we were up 14-10. And he said, with about 3 minutes to go in the game, Jimmy Mac, you made the tragic mistake of kicking it to the African dude. And he went about 90 yards for a touchdown on us to beat us in the city championship. But life comes full circle and we become great friends. So he's an amazing person. I've learned so much from him.
Man, what you said, so the knowing where that AED is and like being prepared and having like some kind of plan, like that is so key.
Yeah.
Did
and
you guys
just to interject, sorry, just because I want to make it
known
that there was a team of people involved. Yes, I was doing the chest compressions and first aid, but there was a team of people getting the AED, somebody getting the ambulance because it's a tricky spot where we were at. How do you get the ambulance in there?
Right.
But it really was a team event. And I believe that the success of that was we were all coaches. And we were all used to, listen, nobody's ever operated in a high pressure situation like this before, but we're used to thinking calmly when the game is on the line and being able to understand what everybody's going through. And I think that it was critical that it was all coaches in there.
I mean,
really
X's and O's is tactics. I always said, like, I think like coaching football, offensive coach of football really helped me with my next job, in SWAT. I think it helped me huge. And I think you're right there. And it's good that you outlined that there's so many people that were prepared to jump in. Yep. It takes, we talk about this at our camps. It's like, be the guy on the camera, not the one holding it, man. Like, if there's anything I want of my sons or of people that stand with me on anything, it's that, like, exactly what you do. Like, you be the guy that's being filmed saving the life, or the guy who steps up on the airline when there's somebody acting crazy and like helps, instead of the one who's holding the phone videotaping the whole ordeal. And that's outstanding to hear that. And the AD and being prepared and like, people actually knowing where it is, like I think that's a discounted, like we talk about it here, every once a month or so we'll do up a video to the members, like, this is where stuff is, or talk in the classes, or make sure obviously our trainers know what it is, because you need to be prepared, because when you need it, you need it. And the time to prepare when it's time to act is over, right? And you did it, and you jumped right in. And that, what you said about the driving around the corner in your car, I can tell you that is 100% normal. Like, that's your adrenaline spike and then your adrenaline dump. And like, when it comes out, it just comes out, man. And there's no stopping it. Just let it go.
That's what I had to do. I couldn't have control over it.
Yeah. So for the next, some things that happen after that too, if anybody's listening, like we just had somebody go through a real, like very scary capsized boat. And like, it is normal, very normal to think about what could have happened, what, what you could have done different, like if it did end up in the bad way. And it's a scary thing for people. So if you find yourself like irritable or like over emotional for a day, like go see somebody, like don't just tough through it. Now that's not just me advice for you, but that's anybody who's listening, because when somebody tells a story like this, there's always somebody who's like thinking about that moment in their life, because you go away from your story into like whoever your kid that was down, like in whatever, could have been anything, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of great people involved in making that happen, including the young man, because he's an amazing young man as well. So
is he cleared for sport?
He says he is. I don't know if I trust it right now yet, but it only happened, I'm going to say it was maybe March 22nd, so it's very, very recent. But to think, like, the kid can dunk a basketball. Like, he's already, he doesn't overexert himself, but he can jump, he can, ride a bike a little bit, and like he's doing phenomenal. It's like nothing ever happened.
That's good, man. That's outstanding. And you know what? I've always said you're a legend in this city. You're going to be a legend in the city. But I mean, if that doesn't lock it down, you got the hero status. And very few people that can say they saved a life, man. And that's a true,
thank you.
It's good for you. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for jumping
Appreciate
in and everybody there and everything that you've, and thank you from everybody who's ever been coached by you or mentored by you, because you've made a difference in my life. You always do and you always will.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it goes both ways. Like, relationships, I think, are two-way streets. And if you're a taker, I say there's people that are energy takers or energy givers. And if that relationship is one way where I'm just looking to gain something by our relationship, I don't think that it's either authentic, nor can that relationship last over a period of time. And I think that that's sometimes, even as a coach, what we fail to realize is that if I build a strong relationship with an individual, I will make them a better athlete. And because they're going to trust me more. And if they trust me more, they're willing to do the things that I ask them to do that are difficult even more. But if I start with, how do I make you a better athlete, and not start with, how do I build a relationship with you, I think you're putting the cart before the horse.
That's a great way to end it. Everybody here, I mean, that's like teams in business, teams at the school board, teams in the gym. Like, that is teams in general, man. Like, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that's a great place to end it. I want to talk about our sponsors, a great team there. Murray Insurance, Desjardins Insurance. They are Southwestern Ontario's #1 rated Desjardins Insurance agency. They're run by Karen Ian, who are Kingsville OGGs, Garage Gym favorites and fan favorites and supporters. So go see them if you need anything for your home, your finance, your business. And of course, HQ Nutrition. Started off this podcast with some focus. I knew I would need the focus because Jimmy brings a lot of energy, and I gotta be on the ball because who knows where it could go. But you were a straight line today.
Oh, thanks.
It was awesome, and so it was great having you as usual. And thank you for coming on, brother.
Oh, always appreciate it.
We got the fist bump, of course. And Jimmy and I usually, like, what was last time? We called the last podcast we did together a table full of beers, or a table full of cans. So it's a little different. The conversation was just as good. I always
end every class now since COVID. I always say, listen, there's enough hate in the world, people. Be nice to one another. And so encourage everybody to do that. There's enough hate in the world. Just get along.
Awesome.
Now's the time to do more and be more.